Hi there. Welcome to the program. I'm Bill Hitchcock. We have got a fantastic program to get out to you, something we've been trying to get out to you for a couple of weeks. And the reason why we haven't is because things keep popping up of urgency and we've been paying attention to that. But we're going to talk about the 2024 Southern Flounder Symposium that was held at the Riverfront Convention Center in New Bern this past March. It was a day-long symposium. It was power-packed. It was a day-long event to provide the opportunity for stakeholders, that's us, researchers, and the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries staff to discuss various topics related to southern flounders. It was more than discuss. These were scientists. These are the people that are doing the research. These are the people that are doing the tagging. These are the people that crunch the numbers. These are the people with the information that we're dying to hear. And the goal was, as they say, was to provide stakeholders, again, that's you and me, the opportunity to both learn about and contribute to ongoing flounder research. Again, this was 5-6 hours long, scientists, and it gets real sciencey. And I have gone through the entire symposium with transcripts and gone over everything, and we're going to give you some snippets from it, the really cool stuff. We're trying to avoid the things that your eyes roll back in the head because they're talking real sciencey and all these things all open to the general public, but really aren't necessarily geared for the general public, but it is fantastic stuff. But before we get going, we're doing this on a Thursday morning right when little Debbie, she didn't bring no snack cakes though. Little Debbie is crossing into North Carolina. The storm coverage has been, as far as I'm concerned, outrageous. Talking about scare you. The best, if you had one forecast model to follow, it's the one, the ECMWF, referred to as the Euro. For years, it has been the best. Notice that years ago, people on TV a few years, even Jim Cantori on the Weather Channel a couple of years ago, it's the best. Simple way to get to it so you can track these things. It's called Tropical Tidbits. Go to Forecast Model. Once you get the Forecast Model, go to ECMWF, press that, press the play button, and you will see their projections of the storm. There's a lot of information you can get from here. I'm not going to get into that right now. The American model, the GFS, you can do that too, and it will give you, oh lordy me, about a 15-day forecast. The Euro will do up to 10 days out. The National Hurricane Center will only go 5 days out, and I respect the National Hurricane Center for what they do. They're not jumping the gun on anything, and they're weighing information from all around the world to come up with their forecast models. So kudos to the National Hurricane Center. And they also tell you themselves that their 4 and 5 day projections have an error of up to 175 nautical miles. That's a lot. So anyway, go to Tropical Tidbits. Go forecast models, go to the ECMWF. Obviously, this is August 8th. We got another 4 to 6, 7 weeks of hurricane watching. So go to the Euro. This is your #1 forecast model to get out to. Now, let's get back onto it. The Southern Flounder Symposium that was held this past March in New Bern, North Carolina. Amazing stuff. And by the way, in the I guess it's the comments or description section at YouTube underneath, I will post the link to this so you can watch the entire affair. And like I said, eyes will roll back in your head sometimes because they get real sciencey sometimes. But we're going to go to who we're going to first. Amy Staples, she's a biologist with the Division of Marine Fisheries. She works out of the little Washington office. She got her bachelor's of science in fishery and wildlife management, and she got her master's in forest resources, University of Georgia. Tagging, that's what she's going to talk about. And by the way, they need people to help tag, volunteer. You got to go through a little training seminar class to be able to do this. And also the tags that they get, you can get up to $100 if you get one of these tagged flounders. But enough of all that. She's going to talk about the tagging of flounder here in North Carolina. Where do they go? When do they do it? How far do they travel? Sometimes it's very, very short from capture to from tag to recapture. There's one that's, well, I won't tell you. Let's go on and take a listen to Amy and hear what she has to say.
So why do we tag fish? You've seen a lot of information in these studies today. So I hope you're seeing that we're kind of building layer upon layer upon layer. So each study is showing you a little bit more. And each thing that we do is a little part of the puzzle to southern flounder. So tagging studies play a vital role in assessing fish populations by providing information about migration patterns. Maybe we're looking at spawning patterns. Maybe we're looking at climate, seasonality. So it's giving us a little bit of information about those migration and immigration patterns. We're looking at habitat use. Why are those fish in that area? Is there something specific? Is it the habitat? Is it some type of water quality? What is it? Is it where the food is? And that food is there because of a certain reason, because of that habitat. We're looking at stock delineation. We've had several questions about that. We're trying to define that stock. Is it just a North Carolina stock, or is this stock for the South Atlantic, for the Atlantic states? Where are these flounder moving, and how do we manage them? We're looking at population structure. We have a population that's full of young juveniles, or do we have mature females out there doing these spawning runs?
I really like what she was talking about when she said we're trying to define the stock. Is it just a North Carolina stock? Because we think of it that way, it's the estuarine, the sounds of the ocean, sound ocean, that's it. Or, as she said, South Atlantic for the Atlantic states. So should we be managing these flounders overall? Now let's get on to it. Let's show you where they've been tagged and where they've been recaptured, how far and how long. So let's go right back on into Amy at the symposium that was held in New Bern this past March.
All right. So let's talk a little bit of numbers here. How many southern flounder have we tagged so far? So this is just kind of a rundown of the species we've tagged from 2014 to 2022 in total. And then southern flounder, we've tagged over 8,000 southern flounder, and total recaptures are 551. Let's look at that a little bit. I know the maps are really small up here, but what I want you to gather from this is what we have literally been tagging from the Virginia border all the way down to the South Carolina border. So we are tagging all throughout North Carolina's coastal estuary waters, near shore waters. And you'll also notice, let me see if I can get the pointer going. I'll show you on both sides. These two little dots right here. Those are legit flounder tags. Of course, we've had different weather cycles, and some rivers get more saltier than others certain time of the years and from different years. And so through our electrofishing surveys, we were actually to tag flounder that far upriver. So those aren't, that's not an error, they were actually tagged there. So these are all the different releases that we have. And then from there, we've had 551 recaptures. And so just building on the data that we've seen from the other researchers, as you can see, we do have a southern movement that is occurring. And we do see those fish down in South Carolina, Georgia, and all the way down to Florida. Now, it's not been many, but we have gotten recaptures from there. And people ask me all the time, how do you know those were legit recaptures? Well, we call and we verify that. We ask them questions to make sure that that fish is one of our fish, that it is one of our tags, and that they actually caught it. We've had in the past folks call and say they're in Savannah, Georgia, and they got a tagged fish. When you start asking questions, you may have found out that they actually caught it from a seafood dealer, or bought it from a seafood dealer, and they found the tag when they were cooking it up. So we do make sure we're verifying that data to make sure it is a legit catch out there and not something that may have been caught, in North Carolina waters and then transported some other way to other states. So some of the really cool information that I have here are the days at large and distance traveled. Now, days at large is going to be from the date from the tagging, original tagging event to when it was recaptured. And so we, on average, see about 141 days in between an original tagging event to when it was recaptured. But the maximum has actually been 4.8 years, and I'll show that fish here in a minute. And then distance traveled. Now, distance traveled is a little deceiving. We can't do things like satellite tags and acoustic tags where we can see that fish moving back and forth in through the waters. Distance traveled for us actually means from the point of the original tagging event to the point where it was recaptured. We don't, with conventional tags, we don't necessarily know that movement all the way in between. So it's from basically point A to point B, traveling by water. So the average distance traveled is going to be 16.6 miles. The maximum, though, is 518 miles. So let's take a look at these two specific fish. There we go. So most days at large. So this fish was out for 4.8 years. It was originally tagged in September of 2015 and then recaptured in June of 2020. And so this fish is really fascinating to me. It's only 8 miles in between the original tagging event and the recapture event. However, it's 4.8 years. We can see that growth rate. It grew 14.6 inches. So just from this data alone, we can guess that this was probably one of the larger females. And just imagine how many times that fish hopefully went offshore to spawn, came back potentially to that same area, went offshore again, came back, and did that over a 4-year period potentially. And that's what I'm saying is, what's interesting today is you have had the chance to listen to all these different researchers. So you can see it's not just one tagging study, it's all these different tagging studies coming together to learn more about these fish, and hopefully continued tagging studies, whether it's satellite, acoustic, or conventional tagging, or another tagging method that is still being developed right now. All this information is important and goes into the management of this species and us learning more about it. So the next fish that we have, this fish is the furthest distance traveled. So in 184 days, it traveled 518 miles from Hogpen Bay all the way down to Hobie Sound, Florida. Didn't grow that much, so we wouldn't expect it to grow that much during that time period, but it traveled that far all the way down to Florida. And it was from if you notice, the tag number is number 17, so it was a fish that we tagged really early on in the study. And again, just interesting to see these different movements of flounder. So what we've learned about southern flounder so far through all these different tagging studies? Well, we see that there's high spring and summer site fidelity, meaning that those early season tagged fish are recaptured in the same system prior to that fall migration. But those larger tagged fish in the fall are highly migratory. Those are the ones that are those spawning mature fish that are going to go offshore potentially or near shore to spawn. Then we have our general movements. So those larger mature fish are migrating to the ocean beginning late summer, early fall, and into the beginning of winter. And then a portion of the stock we do see is migrating south to South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. There is evidence that the fish return to North Carolina estuaries after migration to the ocean, and we've seen that multiple times in the studies that were talked about today. There is limited tagging data, though, in South Carolina and Georgia, so there suggests a low probability of those adult fish moving north into North Carolina waters. Again, this is where more tagging studies can potentially help us tease some more of that data out. And then right now, that current assessment does combine Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina into one unit stock in the U.S. South Atlantic.
Lots of amazing stuff. They've been tagging since, as she said, as Amy said, since 2014 to 2022. She says the southern flounder were tagged, where over 8,000 southern flounder have been tagged, with 551 of them recaptured. That's about a 7% rate. And when she had that board behind her listing other fish that they were tagged and recaptured, the recapture rate for stripers at 3%, red drum 11%, speckled trout 6%, and cobia 18%. Actually, the cobia returns, I think, is kind of high. What does that mean? I don't know. We need to get some more recaptures, or get sonic tags on them like we used, or satellite pop-off tags like what we used to do with the bluefin tuna tag a giant. So we see on an average of 141 days in between tagging and recapture, 4 to 5 months, with the longest being almost 5 years. Absolutely amazing stuff. We do appreciate Amy Staples for all that she did. We're going to do another program, and this is going to be a little bit more complex, with Dr. Rebecca Ash. She's going to talk about where do they go offshore. She's going to talk about the one stocks, the migration. And they investigated things such as the otoliths, the ovaries, the larvae on these flounder to figure out, are they just staying in the sound? Are they staying out in the ocean? Are they going back and forth? How often are they going back and forth? Does a flounder go out in the ocean for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 1 month? What is it? So that will be our next program with Dr. Rebecca Ash. You don't want to miss it. I'm Bill Hitchcock. Till next time, we'll see you.
Hitchcock Television. 40 years of television and film success.